hiding. No. Maybe here. No. Oh, hey, no. My apologies. Yes, I see. Oh, hello. I didn't see you down there in the dark. Yeah, I was distracted by the beeping. Apparently, the alarm system here does not realize that we are in a train station. Frightening result of reality. Oh, look! You brought all your friends with you, I see. Hello. Good evening. I am about to embark on a very long journey on a train. So it could be the longest journey of my life. And so I've packed a cigar, but I can't seem to find it. Well, no, that doesn't surprise me, really. I've often been accused of being absent-minded, but I prefer to think of it as presence of mind elsewhere. So when the train stopped, I thought I would get out and take a look, but it has not turned up. I do like traveling on trains. I enjoy it very much. I especially like the long, dark tunnels with the bright light at the end. Seems I've been through one of those already today. Yes, well, oh, I'm sorry. We have not been properly introduced. You're no doubt puzzled why I am taking up this space, let alone so much space. My name is Gilbert Keith Chesterton. Yes, and you, oh no, that's something. Well, I was falling asleep on the train. Perhaps you're in my dream. Oh, perhaps I'm in your dream. Well, that's a paradox. How splendid. Oh, you'll have to forgive me for enjoying this rather obviously. I don't often have the luck to have such dreams. It's new to me. Well, I suppose we should get on with whatever we're getting on with. Let me see. Perhaps the cigar will cast me into a brighter light. No. Well, perhaps you are a figment of my imagination, and I am talking to myself. Well, I suppose if a fellow doesn't talk to himself, he's not worth talking to. The imagination is a thing of real images, after all. It is the greatest gift of the mind our Lord has given us to make us a little more like Him. And the Christian imagination, specifically the Catholic imagination, soars higher than all the rest. For the Christian imagination understands at its very depth that things are not always what they seem, but are far more mysterious and far greater. And even that every great truth is a paradox. For instance, the last shall be first. The enemy shall be beloved. The instrument of gruesome death and torture, the Roman cross, shall be held up as a sign of hope and selfless love. And the little baby, wrapped in swaddling clothes, barely able to lift its head off the bed of hay in a feeding trough in an abject, dank, dark, damp stable, a cave of a stable, born in absolute poverty, shall be the King of Heaven. The trumpet of the imagination, like the trumpet of the resurrection, shall call the dead out of their graves. You know, it occurs to me, the purpose of imagination is not so much to make wonders facts, but to make facts wonders. And I wonder, with you out there and me up here in the light, this rather feels like a theater. Yeah? I love the theater. I always have. It is the home of imagination. Any man, woman, dog, cat, or common vegetable understands that. It is the forge in the working house of thought. Well, I suppose if the imagination is to set sail, the theatre is a perfect port for it to set sail from. On your imaginary forces let us work, was Shakespeare's words. One of my very first memories was of a theatre. My father built for me a little toy theatre out of cardboard and paste. It was the most glorious thing. A window into the world of fairy tale and fantasy. There were blue-painted goblins to cheer the heart of George MacDonald. And there were vibrantly painted scenery like forests, trees, mountains. The very first thing I ever remember seeing was a scene in that little toy theater. There was this figure. Oh, wait. I have it here. Oh, yes. Here it is. See, he's got a curly mustache, a golden crown, a golden key, and a sword, and an air of confidence, verging on swagger. And he was crossing a little bridge, a perilous bridge, over a precarious gorge, towards an impossible castle. And in that castle there was one tower, and in that tower there was one window, and out of that window, watching him approach, was a beautiful maiden. I really don't remember what she looked like. But I will do battle with anyone that denies her beauty. It burns in my memory like a distant paradise as seen in my toy theater. As far as I am concerned, it is the sight upon which my eyes first opened onto this world. My very first memory. I suppose it will be the last memory, and all others have faded away like a sputtering candle. I always have loved the theatre, though. At my home in Beaconsfield in Top Meadow, we often perform plays with our company. A company of friends, that is. And the children of the neighborhood will come by and often perform with us. My particular favorite character is Sam Weller from the Pickwick Papers. What is right, Squire, and what ain't right is not what you know. I love that one. Yes. But I'm not surprised. The theatre is the Catholic birthright. The Catholic Church brought theatre back after the Romans took all the romance out of it. But the medieval church used theatre to preach the Gospels in the language of the people. And not Latin, but the common language that everyone could understand who weren't lucky enough to be educated in Latin. They would have these large wagons, and they would build intricate sets on them. And then they would wheel all the wagons into town, and all the people would watch them coming. And then they would circle up or form a line in the center of town. It's true, the Catholic Church invented the parade float. And then they would perform the Gospels for everyone to hear. Yes, well, it's no wonder, really, that the Catholic Church is so used to the theatre. Actor, playwright, audience, that's a trinity. But many say that Jesus took on the role of man in the human drama. We are made in his image, the divine creator. So we are made to create, or sub-create on our level. And the theatre is where you create worlds, people them with characters. The word is made flesh when the lines of the character comes out of his mouth. Do you know every Good Friday at Mass, assuming that you all go, I can tell by your humor that you do. Catholics have the best humor. Every Good Friday when you're at Mass and the priest is saying the lines of Jesus, and the lector or deacon is saying the words of Pontius Pilate, and the parishioners are all saying the lines of the crowd. That is medieval theatre, directly from our past. It started with St. Francis, I suppose, in the first Nativity play, but there were many religious, Roswitha, Hildegard, all writing plays. We have used the arts all our lives. They are our birthright. But we have forgotten how they work. I still go to the theater regularly. Yes, I enjoy the classics, Shakespeare and Shaw and Wilde and the Strand or Covent Garden. But I also do love the music hall performances with its song and dance, all the jokes and slapstick comedy and all the singing. I know. Since this is a theater, I suppose maybe I'm here to entertain you. But would you like to hear a song, yes or no?
Yes!
That was really more of a rhetorical question. I did not anticipate such a response. All right, well, then have at it. If you want to hear a song, I shall give you one. But which one? Oh, I know. A friend of mine and I wrote a song. His name was Hilaire Belloc. Belloc had more to do with making me who I am than I had to do with making him Belloc. We wrote a song in a pub, one of our favorite places to work. I believe several pints were consumed by Belloc when we composed this piece. Well, actually, I can't really remember. Perhaps it was I. Suffice it to say that several pints were consumed in the composing of this little ditty. It is called the Pelagius Drinking Song. It is about the heretic Pelagius and the Bishop of Old Auxerre who crushes his heresy. Yes. Jolly tune. It's a drinking song, so if you want to give it a little of this, it's not obligatory. Yeah, all right, well, tally-ho. Pelagius lived at Cardinal and taught a doctrine there. However you get from heaven to hell, it was your own affair. However you sought eternal joy or sank forever to burn, it had nothing to do with the truth, my boy, but was your own concern. Though he didn't believe in Adam and Eve, he put no faith therein. His doubts began with the fall of man. And he laughed at original sin with a roti-toti-toodly-o. He laughed at original sin. Then came the Bishop of Old Auxerre, Germanus was his name. He tore great handfuls out of his hair and he called Pelagius shame. And with his stout episcopal staff so thoroughly whacked and banged, the heretics all both short and tall, they rather had been hanged. We whacked them hardly, banged them long on each and all occasions, till they bellowed in chorus loud and strong their orthodox persuasions with a roti-toti-toodly-o. Their orthodox persuasions. Now the faith is old and the devil is bold, exceedingly bold indeed. And the masses of doubt that are floating about could smother a mortal creed. But we who live in sturdy youth and still can drink strong ale, oh, we put it away to infallible truth that always shall prevail. And thank the Lord for the temporal sword and howling heretics too, and every good thing that Christendom brings, especially barley brew with a roti-toti-toodly-o, especially barley brew. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly, as I have just proved. But I am not surprised that I have a flair for the dramatics. My conversion to Catholicism was a dramatic awakening. Oh, I apologize. The muse strikes. Yeah, I wish I had a cigar now. Nothing like the cigar for a muse to fill your thoughts. Well, no one has really begun to understand comradeship who does not accept with it a certain hearty eagerness for eating, drinking, and smoking. Well, if I can't find something to smoke, I could find something to eat. Yes, perhaps a piece of cheese. No, and some ale. I must travel prepared, you know. It is very important to be fat for me. It is part of my leading a virtuous life. No, I'm quite serious. You know, the only thing I differ from the monastic institutions of old was they thought they could find humility through emaciation, starvation. Well, I'm sure there were thin monks who were holy, but it was the fat ones who were humble. Let me explain. It's a lovely Wednesday day. You know, poets in poetry, they color the world with words. But at the same time, poets have been mysteriously silent about cheese. I wonder why that is. Anyway, Falstaff said, to be fat is not to be hated. But it certainly is to be laughed at. Every day, my corpulence is laughed at by children in the street when they see me chasing after my hat, or squeezing into a phone booth, or squeezing into a booth at a restaurant, or trying to maneuver my way down a narrow corridor on a train station. Yes, well, and I think that's very wholesome for a man. Here, I'll tell you a story that proves my point. Once, when I was in America, I was lecturing at the University of Notre Dame. You know it. Yes. Yeah, South Bend, Indiana. I've always had trouble with that one. Same as Louisiana. It's not as difficult as the towns further on, like Albuquerque. I wonder if they just ran out of names, just started assembling letters, and anyway. And so I was lecturing there, and every night the driver for the university would come to pick me up. Now, getting into the car was no problem. It was mostly gravity. But getting out of the car, that was an entirely different situation. I remember the driver one time told me, what was his name? Oh, Johnny Mangan, wonderful chap. Said, Mr. Chesterton, why don't you try exiting the car sideways? I told him, I have no sideways. I am spherical, like a globe. I am 6 feet 4, but what my circumference is has never been accurately calculated. And so I came up with a plan to sort of rock side to side in the car, trying to build up enough momentum to propel myself out of this steel trap. But as I began to rock side to side, the vehicle began to lurch side to side, groaning and squeaking on its springs. And as I built up momentum, the vehicle lurched faster and further. Soon, people who were coming to the lecture would crowd around the vehicle, watching this strange thing happen. And they would begin to cheer me on, seeing my predicament. And eventually, when I reached the point where I could actually propose myself onto the trajectory I had planned, I shot out of the car like a champagne cork out of a bottle. And a raucous cheer went up among the people, as if they had witnessed the launching of a new battleship. Well, if that is not a wholesome experience for a man, I don't know what is. No one would. No. Just checking. I've been eating a lot of it. Well, I can't find anything. Oh. I suppose I'm not a very tidy person. But I usually know where all my things are. long as I keep them out of my pockets. Once I drop them into those unknown caverns, I wave them a sad Virgilian farewell. I suppose the things in my pockets are still there. I hold the same presumption for the things I've dropped into the sea. But I consider both of those items in those bottomless caverns with reverent ignorance. I suppose on the last day when the sea gives up its dead, a long strand of extraordinary things will come running out of my pockets. I know. I'll tell you what happened to me one day in cold blood when I decided to take things out of my pockets. They're just, Oh, it's a port. It's lovely. There. Oh, good heavens. I'm all backwards front. All right, so where were we? Oh, yes. I was on a train on a very long journey, and I hadn't brought with me any books, any paper, any pencil, anything to write with, anything to read. And so I sat there in my chair, looking at the chair in front of me, the back of the chair, made of wood. And I began to consider the subject of wood. And why our Savior was a carpenter, not a brick maker, or a candlestick maker, or a baker. And just about the time I began to realize that, I realized I had about me an entire collection of unknown curios hung all about me in different places. I was a virtual British museum of walking curios. So I began to take things out. The first thing I took out was a pile of used railway tickets. They showered down like confetti. And I began to see myself as a returning knight from the Crusades, coming back into his town to a parade of flower petals. The next thing I took out of my pockets was, a pocket knife. I need hardly tell you that a pocket knife is a virtual library of thought and story. The sight of it sent me off into a kind of dazed dream where I saw a desperate man searching in the ground for the one glittering stone among all the regular stones. Yes. It's quite frightening. Then I heard the swordsmith's mold as they poured in the liquid ore. And then I heard the hammers on anvils all throughout the country. And then I saw a vague and violent battle where stone axes and stone swords were splintered on this strange new metal shining in a desperate man's hands. And then I began to picture all the swords of the wars, from the Iron Age to our present swords of sabers and bayonets, because a pocket knife is only a short sword. It's also a secret sword. The next thing that came out of my pocket, was a book of matches. And I began to remember, all back through time, fire. Our dear friend that we love, but dare not touch. St. Francis called it sister fire, a fierce sister, warm, but biting. The next thing that came out of my pockets, was a piece of chalk. Yes. Where is that? Oh, there it is. Yes, a piece of chalk. And I thought of all the frescoes throughout all the world and all the artwork. I also thought of our chalky cliffs of Dover in my home country, which welcome any traveler across the Channel on the tempestuous seas, including the Normans when they weren't invited. The next thing that came out of my pocket, it was a modest coin, a £1 coin. And I saw on it the impression of our own Caesar. It made me think of all the coins throughout time and all the emperors and Caesars that had their impression placed on them. And then I began to think of tyrannical governments and the power of the rich over the poor. And then I thought of the clinging and clanging of coins being thrown on the ground as our Savior turned over the tables of the moneylenders. And I realized again, coins, money, possibly the root of all evil. And I cannot tell you all the things that came out of my pockets. It's like a treasure trove. In Aladdin's cave. Yes, string. But they still kept coming. Eventually, I suppose I would get to the bottom of it all. Yeah. But this hasn't worked for years. I don't even know what it's doing. Yeah. More money. I think that's it. Oh, wait. Nope. That's it. No cigars anywhere, though. But I'll tell you one thing that did not come out of my pockets. It was the ticket for the train that I was on at the time, which the conductor sought after very earnestly. Well, that explains my pockets, but I still have not found my cigar, which is a great disappointment to me. I've looked around here through my suitcase as fast as I can. Well, perhaps I will write it down or find it somewhere. Pockets. I was sure that I brought it with me. I knew I had it. Perhaps the fire alarm scared me. But I couldn't think straight. Oh, here is something. Here is something that you should never leave home without. Certainly not travel on a long railway journey without a book of fairy tales. And in this case, the Brothers Grimm. This is a real treasure. Things I most believed then are the things I most believe now. And those things, they are called fairy tales. They are quite reasonable things, not fantasies. Fairyland is nothing but the sunny country of common sense rolled up in adventurous tales, and they bestow their lessons on us at a very young age. You see, I knew of the magic beanstalk before I had ever tasted a bean. I was sure of the man in the moon before I was certain of the moon. I knew that all growing things reached up to heaven from where the power to grow descended. And I knew that the moon was a great personal gift to us by a loving God to watch over us at night. Fairy tales do not tell children that dragons exist. No. Children already know dragons exist. Fairy tales tell children that dragons can be killed, and that there is real evil in the world, and real courage that is needed to slay it. So, we have the story here of chivalrous lesson from Jack the Giant Killer. That giants should be killed because they are gigantic. Like a prideful, tyrannical government powering low above us. The brutish force to be exercised from above, such as pride. Oh, and then, here. Then there is the lesson of Cinderella, which is really the lesson of the Magnificat, that the lowly shall be exalted, the proud shall be brought low. Yes, you see, when you really read fairy tales, one thing goes through them from one end of the other. And Beauty and the Beast. That a thing must be loved before it is lovable. Yes, when you really read fairy tales and you see that one thing runs through them from one end to the other, and that is that the idea of peace and happiness rests on one condition. Cinderella, who had a godmother, looking like you, could have a dress of unearthly brilliance. But she must be back by midnight. She must be back by a certain time, or the happiness is gone. Very similar to you must not eat a certain fruit from a certain tree in the garden. And then there is, Bluebeard's wife. She is given a box and told not to open it. And when she does, all the evils rush out at her. The king in Sleeping Beauty may invite fairies to the christening, but he must not be prideful and parsimonious. He must invite all the fairies, or dreadful things will happen. A promise is made to a yellow dwarf. It is broken. The world goes wrong again. Fairy tales, you see, are not responsible for producing in children fear of things non-existent, but producing in children fear of violating the sacred order of happiness. And moreover, fairy tales provide children the courage of a St. George to kill the dragon that threatens that sacred order from without. You know, the one thing, aspect of fairy tales is the one thing that attracts most normal adults to children: a sense of wonder. If you read a fairy tale to a 7-year-old boy, and you say, in this story, a young boy opens a door and sees a dragon, well, the 7-year-old boy will be quite curious how that happened. But if you read that same story to a 3-year-old, the 3-year-old will be more interested in how the boy opened the door. Children are always in a constant state of wonder. You see, when you travel about the streets and you see below you these, we call them prams, carriages with little babies in them, the enormous bulbous heads. Yes, 3 times the size of their body. The mark of these human mushrooms. One must always remember that inside each one of these orbs is a brand new universe, as new as it was on the 7th day of creation. Inside each one of these heads is a new field, a new grass, new flowers, new sky. For the child will stare at something as if he is seeing it for the very first time, and very often is. It is a miraculous gift, the world, that is given to him on his birthday, that he will continue opening for the rest of his life. And we adults, we have forgotten that. So we jaded, we stand there, stop in our tracks, delight at the child delightfully wandering, at the star or the inchworm, and then we walk right by us without looking up or down. But it is also the humor of children that is the most endearing quality, that is the bond that holds the cosmos together. A child will often say, and perhaps this is why they do, because of their joy, they say, "Do it again, do it again." And then the adult tries very hard to repeat the physical activity that brought such joy to the child. I wonder if that is the same merriment our Lord feels when he looks at the sun every morning and says, "Do it again." Or to the moon at night, "Do it again." Agrees with me. So, where'd you come from? Because I knew the place for you. Yeah, there. I have to write that down. That was good. Let me see. Not what the baby said. Although that was rather fascinating in and of itself, I admit. Oh, I can't find a cigar, I can't find a pen. I have no idea what my life has become. Does anyone have a pen? No, wait, I think I have one. I just can't see it. The lights are so bright. Ah, there we are. There. There. again, do it again. Whatever I think, I must take copious notes. I must put it in ink when I think. Ink. You know, before I ever became a writer, I wanted to be an illustrator, a cartoonist of political cartoons in the London Times. So when all my friends went off to Oxford and Cambridge, I went off to the Slade School of Art to doodle. I was quite good at it, really. Here, I'll show you. I'll doodle right now. Here we are. I'll use this pen here. Okay. Hat. Oh, mustache. Wait. All right. Let's see what my leg looks like for a second. There you go. There, you see? It's me, off to art school. Brilliant likeness. Little did I know that my time at art school was going to be far more different than I thought. It was to set me on a course in a direction for my life that I had completely not expected. Well, the Lord is always writing the story of our life, isn't he? He just doesn't always give us the chapter titles ahead of time. This time in England was a very strange time. The Victorian period was fascinated with the supernatural and the occult. Seances, Ouija boards. Mediums were always available to come right to your house and help you speak to the dead. Queen Victoria herself had many seances in Windsor Castle. There were books written about it, there were clubs, there were societies, there were lectures. Even my own house had a Ouija board. My brother and I, we played with it one day when we were little children, trying to speak to spirits. That was the day I believe the door was opened and the devil peered in at us, got his hooks into me. That's when my madness began. You see, in art school, you often find yourselves around people that are very different than you are, as I did. And when you find yourself around several cads and idiots, going about drinking every night and talking all sorts of triviality, you do discover, for some extraordinary reason, that there's always one of them that is far worse than a cad, and not an idiot. One man who has condescended to be in this company. And though he can talk driveling dissipation with his fellows, he can also argue politics with a socialist and philosophy with a Catholic. Such a man became my friend and filled my head with morbidities that I want to draw the most ugly things. And I will never forget the one night where he and I talked about things very real. It was a very cold evening. There was a building on the campus with large stone steps that go up to the front door of this building, like a pyramid. And we stood there at the top of those stairs one evening, alone and in the bleak cold of it. There was nothing to see, no stars, except a groundskeeper had gathered together a small pile of brush and twigs and was burning them. And every once in a while, a spark would fly up between us. But we stood there for the longest time, not speaking, which was strange. And finally, he turned to me, and he said, "Why are you becoming Orthodox, Chesterton?" Well, after he said it, I really hadn't thought that I was. But once he did say it, I knew that it was true. And so I said to him, "I am becoming Orthodox because I have stretched my brain till it bursts, and I believe that the old belief that heresy is worse than sin. And I hate this new nihilism because it is dangerous. He looked at me. You mean dangerous to morality? Well, I suppose you're right, old boy. But what do you care about morality? I felt like I was being tempted in the desert. I thought hard of what to say. My words came with a new conviction. Although I'd never said them before, they sounded very familiar to me. You know, like when you are a child and you go through the woods and you see a little garden path. And then when you're older, you go back and you see the same path and you remember it. And so I turned to him and I said, do you see those sparks flying up between us? And he said, yes. I said, oh, they're not beautiful. He said, oh, yes, they're splendid. And I said, that is all I ask of you. That there is beauty in the world. And if there is beauty in the world, it was put here as a gift to us by a giver. And it takes a virtue to be able to see it. And that is why I hate this new nihilism, because it believes in nothing. And if you believe in nothing, you soon will lose the sight and be in a dark room, not able to see the beauty around you. And that is evil. He looked at me as if nothing would please him more. He said, well, I suppose you're right. Only what you call evil, I call good. Suppose I were to ruin a woman, and one of those sparks would go out. Or perhaps I were to do something even worse, to draw blood, and one of those sparks would seem like a faded piece of color on a wallpaper. Those sparks would go out, Chesterton, but not the ever-expanding power of evil, the expanding pleasure of evil. And then he stared at me for the longest time, without saying a word, and then left, walked away down the steps past the fire into the shadows. And I knew him for what he was, devil worshipper. I saw walking behind him whole armies of his kind, faceless, faithless, armies of damnation and degradation marching over a scorched earth, leaving nothing but rack and ruin in their wake, and feeding off pleasure and the lies that are spewed forth from the father of all lies. And I realized at that moment my life hung by the thinnest thread. If I was to follow him or turn to God. You see, I had to choose between the light and the dark, the white flag or the red flag. There is no compromise in this battle. There is no pink flag. And the decision you make, you will have to live with for the rest of your life. I knew immediately my decision. I would run to the loving arms of my Lord. And so I grabbed my things, and I hurried down the steps, and I turned around the corner to go back to my room, and I stopped because I heard his voice and another of his vile compatriots whispering in an alleyway. And I stopped, frozen, not knowing what to do. And I heard his vile associate say, "Did you do it? Did you actually do it?" And my old friend said, No, I didn't. But I found the place. No one is there. We were all alone. It would be as easy as taking a breath to end his life. I shall do it, but not tonight. You see, because if I do that, if I take a life, then I will not know the difference between right and wrong, and I shall be free. I slunk back into the shadows. I realized that I was indeed among devil worshippers who, not being able to sway me from my convictions, might kill me to test theirs. I ran back to my room, packed my things, and I never returned to school. I didn't finish college. I never got a degree. But I did not go down that road. I did go to a lot of lectures before I left that I really enjoyed. But what happened to that devil worshipper, you may wonder. Well, I heard later that he committed suicide. He used the tools of pleasure, not of pain. Poor fellow. I know the road he went down. And even now, tonight, here with you, I shudder to think how close I came to losing my way by following his. And so, I had a change of careers. I began to write all sorts of things. Here, I have an article. My wife, Frances, gave it to me. I use it for a bookmark. This I can find. It's not a cigar or a pen or anything I really want. Yes. Here it is. I always find this very amusing. Here, let me tell you. It's from the Times. Mr. Chesterton, I should use a different voice for the Times. Mr. Chesterton has written over 80 books, including the Father Brown mysteries. I'm rather proud of those. Several hundred poems, and several hundred short stories, several hundred plays. Well, you know, I think that might be an exaggeration. And over 4,000 essays from various newspapers and various magazines. Well, you know, I was just surprised that anybody really wanted to read anything I wrote. You know, but it was the same with art. You see, it all starts with a picture in my brain. And then I see the picture, and then I want to sketch it. And then I want to add a caption or poem to it. And then it becomes a story or song. It was like that time I read the article about this group of dour Puritans who wanted to close all English pubs. Gadzooks, can you imagine? And I thought, well, what would happen if a few common men got together and got a barrel of liquor and traveled around to the countryside, making sure the common people had their drink? Well, that became a song, and it became a book, The Flying Inn, which is a story of Captain Dalroy and Humphrey Pump, who have a handcart with a barrel full of rum, who travel around the countryside making sure the common folk and the peasants can have their drink, when only the political elite are allowed to drink with a medical certificate. Oh, you know, I think I have that poem right here. Yes. Oh, I do. Yes. Here it is, the poem of Right and Wrong. That was the one from The Flying Inn. Oh, here it is. Feast on wine and fast on water, and your honor shall stand sure. God's almighty son and daughter, he the valiant, she the pure. If an angel out of heaven brings you something else to drink, thank him for his kind attention. Go and pour it down the sink. Yes. Oh, no. There's several poems here. Oh, I like this one. The Donkey. When fishes flew and forests walked, and figs grew upon thorn, some moment when the moon was blood, then surely I was born, with monstrous head and sickening cry, hee-haw! And ears like errant wings, the devil's walking parody on all four-footed things. The tattered outlaw of the earth, of ancient crooked will, starve, scourge, deride me, I am dumb, I keep my secret still, fools. For I also had my hour, one far fierce hour and sweet. There was a shout about my ears, and palms by my feet. Yes, the donkey. I think I wrote that about myself, really. Well, that such an ungainly creature would carry the burden of orthodoxy, you see. Oh, no. What's this doing here? St. George he was for England, and before he killed the dragon, he drank a pint of English ale out of an English flagon. For though he fast right readily, in hair shirt or in mail, it isn't safe to give him cakes unless you give him ale. It's a lovely piece. Oh, no. Oh, this is a very long piece. I can't possibly read it to you tonight, or you'll never get home. My train might leave at any moment. But this is a long piece I wrote. The Ballad of the White Horse. You see, I thought of it on a train going through Berkshire. They have the hills there, and underneath the topsoil there is chalk. And so if you pull the chalk away, you can make a giant design on the hillside. And there's a giant white horse there to sort of testify to the battle between Alfred and the Danish Vikings. I dedicated it to my wife, actually. My wife never allows me to speak about her. No. Not to talk about her in public, not to be in the limelight, not to write about her, but I dedicated this to her because it was chivalrous. Before the gods that made the gods had seen their sunrise pass, the white horse of the White Horse Vale was cut out of the grass. Before the gods that made the gods had drunk at dawn their fill, the white horse of the White Horse Vale was hoary on the hill. Age beyond age on British land, eons on eons gone, was peace in war in the western hills, and the white horse looked on. For the white horse knew England when there was none to know. He saw the first oar break or bend. He saw the heaven fall and the world end. Oh God, how long ago? God, how long ago? Frances Alice Blogg, my wife, my bride, my queen, my rescuer. She is my compass, my lighthouse, always cutting through the thickest fog and always bringing me back to a deadline for a newspaper or a lecture or the right train, and usually with both shoes on and matching socks. She is my lady. She is the one who is trapped in the tower, to which I cross the perilous bridge, verging on swagger, to tilt with the dragon and rescue her. Well, she is my wife. I must be chivalrous to her. You know, when we first got married, we decided to honeymoon down on the coast, near the smugglers' coves of ancient pirates near Yarmouth and Great Norrington. Yeah. So, on the way out of town, I stopped by a shop and I bought a revolver. Yeah. I would not bring my wife to the land of brigands without a suitable shooting iron, in case some pirate came into the restaurant during tea time. I think I still have it, actually. Yes. Oh, yes, here it is. I knew I did. Well, it's not loaded, so there's no need to worry. There, yes. I don't think it's loaded. No. No, it's a very handy thing to have about. Really. No, if you ever get in an argument with an atheist who says, I would rather be dead than Christian, you can say, well, all right then. But hold still. You can't imagine how quickly they change their point of view when confronted by their boast. It's a very handy thing, this. When I met Frances, I was in a very bad place. I was lost in my life, like Dante in the wood, or like Christian in the Pilgrim's Progress in the Slough of Despond. As if I was swimming up from a dark and murky sea, just barely able to see the flickering sunlight on the waves above me. I knew there was a God, but how that dynamic worked, I didn't. I had no certainty in my life. And so I was lost. Frances, however, she was living her faith. She read the Bible daily. She taught Sunday school. She helped the sick. She fed the poor. She cared for the elderly. She was truly living her Christian tenets for her life. She is a poet, yes. Ran a debate society, had a little newspaper that circulated around her town, and came from a large, loving family. She gave me the certainty. Our life was one of joy and one of sorrow. We were never able to have children. That was her dream, to become a mother. Especially coming from such a large family. She went from examination to invasive examination, doctor after doctor, and surgery after surgery after surgery. Always our hopes filled and then dashed upon the rocks. It was tragic and painful, and I could do nothing but to love her, and comfort her. But this is a sorrow so deep in a woman's heart that no one else can touch it. Many women, I believe, when they go through such an event or circumstance in their life, become angry with God. Some become envious whenever they see children playing with parents. But not Frances. Frances, accepting her fate as what God had given her for her life, accepted it with gratitude. We prayed, often with hands intertwined, and she praised him and thanked him for the sorrow. And instead of turning it into endless sorrow, she went out and began to recruit all the children from the neighborhood. They all came to our house all the time. Birthday parties, puppet shows, their parents too, their cousins, their nieces, their nephews. She brought joy out of this situation. when I'm in my study, working, and the children stop by the window with their siren song, and I heft myself out of the casement and deck myself with feathers so that we may woo, 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 around the hedgerows on our warpath. It is Frances who comes back and finds me, puts me back to work, and then takes all these Beaconsfield savages and feeds them lemonade and cookies before allowing them to disperse. It was Frances who taught me how to love selflessly, deeply, and heroically. Father Knox used to say of her that she was an Amazonian warrior princess because she had such courage and strength. It was Frances who introduced me to Christ. Well, the whole reason of trying to explain why I am a Christian, well, there are 10,000 reasons, all amounting to one, that Christianity is true. The Catholic Church is the only place in society that has the audacity to say that the truth is that there is truth. The Catholic Church is not a meeting place, or it is a trysting place of all the great truths of the world. And you can find out those truths just by opening the door and going in and saving yourself the stupendous effort that I made, because you will see the tabernacle right in front of you, where truth lives. Now, going to church doesn't make you a Christian any more than standing in your garage makes you a car. One must commit to the arduous task of doing a thing. One must love a thing very much if you do it without any hope of doing it well, or without fame, or without money. So it is with life. So it is with the life that you are living in awe and wonder at this miraculous gift given to you by our Lord, a gift that you will be opening every day since you receive it on your birthday to the end of your life. That is the golden key. That is the understanding. That, my friends, is the golden key. The key that unlocks all the doors to every truth that you will ever find or ever need to know. To surrender. Oh, appears my train's getting ready to leave. Oh, goodness. Well, I've made quite a mess of things here. I must try to put my things back together. No, here. I hope when the train of the afterlife comes for you that you will be prepared and packed. And I hope that if you pack a cigar, you're able to find it later. But I do believe that I think God, in his all-knowing wisdom, knew that I really enjoyed being on trains. And so he decided to let my departure be on a train. I feel I should sum up something, say something at the end. I began this evening telling you about a story in my little toy theater. What I should have said was, it was in that moment that I really saw life with wonder inside that toy theater. And I've always tried to maintain that sense of wonder all my life. Childlike wonder, not childish, childlike. For as our Lord says, if you must become like little children if you want to enter the kingdom of heaven. Well, thank you, St. Anthony. Oh, this changes everything. Now I can talk for hours. No, I wouldn't dare do that to you. There we go. This is good. The critical thing in life is if you take things for granted or you take them with gratitude. Gratitude, well, it's only happiness, doubled by wonder. I will see you at the wedding feast, eh? Tally-ho! Hold that train! Hold that train!
When police catch criminals in the act, they often lose their temper, like this